Just want to take a few minutes to talk about what Redmond's vision is for a standards-based gradebook, try to get people on the same page. We have two clear goals when implementing our new standards-based gradebook, and that is one, clear and accurate reporting of student performance by standard. I'll explain that in a minute. And two, a parent portal that reflects student performance by standard. So here's just a mock-up drawing that I did of a potential standards-based grade book and what it could look like. And I know Synergy has something that looks very similar to this, and I just want to clarify, not that it has to look exactly what I've made here or anything, but that the principles behind it I think need to be there. And this is just an effort to align our vision with where you guys are, and clarify as a team what are critical elements for us in a quality gradebook. So if you look down the side here, you can see students' names listed just like any other grade book, and across the top you can see the standards listed. And what's critical here is that you can see just an intuitive summary of student performance on standards and an overall course grade. We know that these scores right here, these A's for Jose and Nick, who has a couple of C's, a B, and a couple of A's, that there's more scores in the gradebook than this. That this is a summary score of different assignments that have addressed that standard, and I'll show you how we might be able to look at that in a second. But that these then will summarize to create an overall grade, and whether that's by average or by power law, whatever that teacher might choose, that those then summarize and create a clear course grade. In addition, we would like to be able to see a fuller picture by including some results of summative assessments, whether that's our state test, Easy CBN, a teacher-developed common assessment, or even a nationally normed assessment like ACTs or SATs into the gradebook if possible. Projects, larger projects, things like that might be identified here, performance-based things. But it's key then that these grades represent student performance on the identified standards, and that these are the overall grade for that particular standard. It's also important for teachers to be able to see what are the assignments behind here that have addressed this standard, what are those scores. So if a teacher were to click on this, what we'd love to be able to see is then a breakout. So if the teacher clicked here, they could then see a breakout of the scores, and these gray boxes represent assignments. So this summary score then gets kind of highlighted and says, okay, here are the different result scores on these assignments for this particular standard about supporting a thesis, and these power law together or average or whatever the teacher chooses to come up with this overall grade for the standard. And a teacher could even go in here and say, oh, that Meissen man, actually the kid who got a C minus redid his, and now he's got a B here. And then these refactor together to come up with this overall score here, and that updates. So much like you would enter in a traditional gradebook for assignments, but we're saying to do this by standard, and that there's an overall grade by standard that gets calculated out of that. So, and then if a teacher wanted to say, okay, well, let's see what's the next standard, let's click on evaluate cause and effect relationships. The teacher could then look down and see the assignments. Looks like if mice and men hit up two standards, this one assignment, and the kid got an A on both of those. Also the thesis creation assignment here, looks like they got an A on that, and then those calculate together to come up with this overall grade, and so forth down the line with the different standards. And that's how, based on these assignments, these overall grades are calculated. And then from there, it calculates the overall course grade, which you can see over there on the right. And so to go back to that first screenshot, here could be an example of a whole class look at standards-based, and I think that in Synergy there's a pretty similar look to this. But what's critical though is that a teacher can look and see quickly by clicking on these different standards by whole class view and seeing the assignments that attach to this standard. And even potentially a teacher could come up here and enter scores this way, and it could recalculate the overall standard score. So they wouldn't have to go and look at points on assignments or anything like that. They could even enter them in just by standard on a spreadsheet just like this. If then a teacher were to click on a student's name, which is something that Synergy has, it looks something similar to this, but there are some key principles we believe are crucial, and that is that, again, it's intuitive as to how the overall course grade is calculated based on standard. So here you have overall standard scores. So you have the standards down the side here, and you have projects, assignments, tests, and quizzes across the top. For project A, you can quickly look and see that this project addressed this standard here and this standard here. Looks like, multiplication and whole number exponents or something. You can see that the student's performance on that project based on their 2 grades. But most importantly, you can look horizontally and see here's the overall score by standard, and here's how it came about. On project A, you got an A for that standard. Assessment 1, you got an A, and assessment 2, there was an A. Student did flawlessly. In a traditional grade book, they tend to look vertically at this and say, okay, project A, here's an overall score for project A, and then those all get calculated. So it's easy to see, here are the projects or assignments you did or didn't do, which equals your grade. But what we want to be able to say is, here are the scores on this standard that you did poorly on or did excellently on, which then calculates your grade by standard. Then once we have the student's grades calculated by standard, it calculates an overall grade. We see this calculation, this horizontal calculation, being power law or average or teacher chosen, and then this calculation here, likewise, could be power law or average. But again, it's critical that it's calculated horizontally and not just vertically, that we're not just looking at assignment scores and adding all this together with points, but that we're looking at horizontally, we're looking at standards-based scores. And then down below that, being able to view and see the behavioral standards, which could be pulled out and separated, which are not part of the academic grade of the course. These keys to success I'll include in the presentation that I'll email, but we just think the couple of keys to this really are that it's intuitive. You can see student growth. For example, if we were to look at this student or this standard here for this student, a C, a B, and an A, it looks like this kid was growing over time. Looks like there must have been power law for this, but that it's intuitive by standard. And a quick example of parent view, we would love to see something very similar, if not the same thing, to what the student view looks like or a teacher's view of each individual student. Again, parents could come in and look at, by standard, here's my student's grades, and because of those grades on the standards, here is my student's overall course grade, and look at how that gets calculated. So parents can come in and look, and I know in the Synergy gradebook there's options to turn assignments in or check different things or behaviors or all these other things. But again, we're saying these are the minimum requirements that we're looking for to facilitate a successful implementation in the Redmond School District. And so lastly, again, there's 2 key things: clear and accurate reporting of student performance by standard, not having to enter assignment scores and all those kinds of things, and try to figure out what standard scores are and how all that works. But really saying, okay, here's an assignment. It had 3 standards it addressed. Here are the 3 scores, and those then populate where they need to in terms of the standards-based reporting. And then the parent portal that reflects student performance by standard. Again, we know that Synergy has a robust reporting system, and there's a lot more to it, but at least a parent could say, here are the standards my kid's learning about in math, here are the projects and assignments, and here's an overall grade. So I can tell it's doing really well here, maybe struggling a little bit with this standard down here, which is why he has a B in the class. As opposed to, here's the assignments or projects my son or daughter did or didn't turn in, and then skipping all this piece and just saying, okay, so therefore the result is that you have a B in a class. And the reason why we think it's important to report that way to kids and parents is because we know that accurate feedback is one of the #1 indicators of student success. And so we believe that if we report back on student performance in a clear and articulate way for parents and kids to view and to work on, then our students will improve, our schools will improve, and ultimately our district will improve.